Hello everyone, Jill here. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome to another Cherry on Top YouTube hop. This one for December is focused on frames. And when I heard that, I was like really glad because I had these frames from 49 in Market in my stash that I have been wanting to use with bird paintings that I did during a challenge called Birdtober, an Instagram challenge. And so I wanted to say a little bit about a few different design principles. First of all, these frames, of course, become like a really good choice if you are wanting to work with a grid design. And grid designs, I will say, are a fast and easy way to scrapbook, especially the kind I like, which are loose grids, where you put things together, but you kind of mix up the grid and you don't try to make it perfect. I wanted to show you that these frames actually are literally stitched. You can see that even more clearly when you flip them over. And you might think, well, how do you get the pictures to fit since the frames are different sizes? I just eyeballed it. I print my pictures at home. I just adjusted them on the 4x6. It took a little trial and error, but I didn't really waste any photo paper except I was trying to choose from the 30 some birds that I painted, which ones would go together the best. I ultimately kind of went with colors, and you can see these coordinate with their blues and rusty browns. I wanted to focus on fall and kind of draw out those fall colors. Okay, so I'm just doing a couple finishing touches here on camera. So I'm going to go ahead and, this is the tape runner I use. I'm going to go ahead and adhere this. Some things have been glued down and some not. So this will be like a partial process for you. And you can see my placement is a little bit like here and there. I guess it's kind of important to keep sort of the same amount of white space in between the parts of your grid, in between your frames. But so much depends upon how imperfect or perfect you want it, and we're all different that way. I personally like the imperfect, which works really well because it just makes it, I think, casual and fun in the creating. These two I've already put down. Speaking of the stitched frames, I want to tell you, I'm not going to take you to my sewing machine, but I will show you, and I think you can see this on camera. I did a double line of stitching just like on the frames, but I did it in a peachy color. So essentially this block mimics the other three in some ways, but it's also different. It's not a photo and it has the stitching, but the stitching's in a different color. And that's one of the things I really like to do when I design in a grid. I like to play with sameness and difference, and like a structured design and a free-flowing design. So I think that's one thing you can learn from my style of scrapbooking. Okay, so grid design, stitching. I also want to say a little bit about working with color. You can see, as I said, that I'm working with a kind of rusty color and different shades of blue. So when it came time to stamp my title, there were a couple things I was thinking about. One was pulling out the colors. The other was, since I wasn't going to embellish much, I wanted to use kind of a fancy stamp. This is one, not sure if it's still in the ACOT store, but it's a popular one from Pink Fresh, and it's very scripty. And so, I mean, I think you guys probably all know how to stamp, but I will show you a little bit of what went into my process. I love Distress Oxides by Ranger, Tim Holtz. And so this is the range of colors that I chose. And I could have stamped right on the sheet, on the background paper. And I do that sometimes. This time, what held me back was I was working with a little bit fancier kind of font. And I wasn't, sorry about my dog, wasn't sure if it was how it was going to fit. And I wanted to experiment a little bit more. And then I really loved this leaf paper that's also 54 in Market, and decided to go ahead with it. Using it, because I think that it just coordinate really well and then give me the safety of stamping, as I do here, yeah, there's a dog out there my dog's barking at. Hopefully this will pass soon. This is one of our favorite neighborhood dogs, so Hazel. Okay, so So then you just stamp out the title. And when you work with an alphabet like this, you do have to kind of watch out to where these swirls go. As a result, I decided to go with a little bit of the wonky on the B because I wanted these swirls to interact. And since I knew it was going to be a little wonky, I also deliberately made it a different color. And that allowed me to pull in the rusty hinge. And that way the swirl doesn't just become like a big mass of blue. Instead, it has a kind of, I think, artistic look to it. Yeah, so there's a little bit of work that went into the stamping, but I'm not perfectionistic, and if I had been a little more perfectionistic or wanted to twist things around, I had a whole piece of paper. I didn't have to use this block. So that's the advantage of stamping on another piece of paper. I also think it works kind of well when you're working with a grid because you actually have a whole nother element. So that's the stamping, and then the embellishment, and then the journaling. I just did handwriting for my journaling, hand wrote my journaling and put it underneath the title block, which is typical for this kind of grid design for me. Okay, so the final stage is to, as we think about color, which we picked up with stamping ink and the color of the photos that I chose, we can also think about embellishment. And I wanted to embellish my page. I'm really loving sequins these days, and these Catherine Pooler kind of collecting all the different ones. This one's called Park Avenue, and it's a really nice combination of rich blues and golds and rusty colors, dark oranges. And so as you can see, I just scattered them across the page. You can probably also see a little bit of ink splatters. I didn't do too much, and it turned out fine because it's a subtle, I used Heidi Swapp's Color Shine, and it's a subtle chartreuse. But I like the way it picks up the green that's there in smaller touches. Yeah, and so I'm just using matte medium to glue down my, oops, got that upside down there, so kind of messed. But anyway, I just put it on a little bit like this. Use We Are Memories Keeper quick stick. You can use like any kind of tool you want. And essentially, some people use a nice glue bottle, but mine tend to get clogged easily. So I prefer just to pour some out. And then the nice thing about sequins is they just take a little bit of this glue, and I don't use a tweezer or anything. I just kind of drop them in once I put the wet glue down. So you can see how that works. I also like to staple sequins on, so I do that in a couple places. And the only other thing is date stamping. And I did some really messy date stamping again in all of those colors to kind of work a little bit more with color. And yeah, and since this was for October, I didn't put a particular date, but I wanted to get the 2021 in there. You could also do that with like letter stickers or something if you wanted to make sure you had a more prominent version of the date, but that worked for me. So anyway, yeah, let me know in the comments if you have any questions about the techniques or the design ideas that went into this page, and thanks for joining me today. Catch you next time.